Picture this, it's your weekly D&D game. Your party is traveling through the countryside and decides to stop for a rest at a small farming village. While in the village, you find out there's actually a shortcut to your destination. If you were to take the main road like you had planned, you would still have another week of travel ahead of you. But if you take a shortcut through the fields, you're able to cut at least 2 days off your journey, maybe even 3 depending on how quickly you move. You and your party are nervous about taking the shortcut. Sounds way too good to be true. But all of the farmers tell you it's safe. They've never had any problems. In fact, they've never even seen a predator near their village. Everything seems totally fine. And so you rest, and the following morning, you trust the farmers and take the shortcut through the fields. A few hours pass, and there are no disturbances. So your party, feeling comfortable and confident in the advice you've been given, decide to pause for a moment and take a nice short rest for a little lunch. As one of your party members goes to cast Create Food and Water for this lunch you're trying to have, the spell doesn't work, and you swear you hear the grass rustling nearby. Hello! It's time for another D&D monster mashup. This is a series wherein I'm taking 2 D&D monsters, slapping those babies together, and seeing what I can come up with. This week I decided to mix things up a little bit from my last video, which is in the card up above. And instead of pre-picking both monsters, I instead used a randomizer I found online. So let's send it back to past me to see what that randomizer rolled. Let's see what I roll on the randomizer. 2 monsters, make them unique. If they're humanoids, I'm re-rolling. Oh wait, but I did the cube last week. I can't use a cube again. Let's re-roll in pairs. There it is. Thank you, past me. As you guys saw, the randomizer gave out 2 very interesting monsters here. We have the Aeorian Nullifier and what I am choosing to pronounce as an Alseid. No idea if that is correct though. So an Aeorian Nullifier is this mage hunting monstrosity. It has these giant mouths all over its body that emit a horrid gnashing sound that can confuse its prey, and it has a reaction counterspell that doesn't actually use spell slots, and it gets to just do it using its reaction. And on the other hand, we have the Alseid. Alseids are a type of nymph, specifically a nymph that lives in tall grasslands. These creatures blend into the fields around them and actually enrich the land surrounding them. So many farmers and communities consider these creatures to be blessings on their fields and will give offerings of things like honey in an attempt to earn their favor. These monsters would not be more different from one another. On the one hand, we have a mage hunting monstrosity, and on the other hand, we have a field blessing fae. What do you do with that? Well, I'll tell you what I did with that. I present to you the Magus Flytrap. The Magus Flytrap is a solitary fae creature who, when standing still, is indistinguishable from the grasslands it calls home. These creatures are playful and good aligned, and they, much like the Alseids, enrich the land around them. But they are fae at the end of the day, and a fae loves nothing more than a little trickery. For the Magus Flytrap, this trickery goes hand in hand with its love of eating magic. When they detect magic in the grasslands they call home, they will stalk their prey for as long as they have to until finally a spell is cast, at which point, from a safe distance, they will use their reaction to consume that spell and enter a state of pure euphoria. Notably, though, the Magus Flytrap doesn't want to kill these creatures it's stalking. It just wants their magic to snack on. With the lore for this creature I've created in mind, let's take a look at that stat block. First up, we have the boring parts of this stat block. I decided that my goal was to create a CR10 monster here. Given that the Aeorian Nullifier, which is the harder of the 2 creatures, around CR12, that felt appropriate. Given the challenge rating, I wanted this creature to be fast, but not so fast that a party can't catch up to it. And so I settled on a speed of 35 feet. As for resistances and immunities, I decided that I was going to take the Aeorian Nullifier's damage immunities and turn those into damage resistances instead for this creature. As for languages, because this creature is a fae, Common and Sylvan naturally seemed the most appropriate, but because it's incredibly plant-like, I ultimately decided this creature shouldn't be able to actually speak, but can understand. And as for its senses, because this creature ultimately is trying to track down and find magic users in order to consume their spells, I decided I wanted to give it a special detect magic sense. This is essentially like the detect magic spell itself, but with an extended range of 120 feet. That way, this creature can stalk prey from afar, like I'm envisioning. And lastly, because I was choosing a CR of 10 here, I decided an AC of 17 was most appropriate, and as for HP, I went with 157. Now, this HP is honestly lower than I could have made it per the DM's guide on creating monsters, but I decided that because this creature isn't a predator, and because of how some of its abilities that I'll explain later scale and damage, I wanted to make it a little bit squishier. Now that the boring stuff's out of the way, let's get to the abilities. When coming up with the abilities for the Magus Flytrap, I wanted to prioritize abilities that were strategic and defensive rather than offensive, and so I gave the Magus Flytrap 4 abilities. The first ability, Hide in Plain Sight. This I took directly from the Alseid. What this ability does is when the Magus Flytrap is in grasslands, it actually has advantage on stealth. Makes perfect sense considering this thing just looks like a giant clump of grass. Second, Magic Resistance. Both the Alseid and the Aeorian Nullifier had this ability, so felt appropriate to give it to the Magus Flytrap as well. The third ability is Photosynthesize. This allows the Magus Flytrap to recover health when in sunlight. After all, this is a fey plant. It's not going to eat, it's going to photosynthesize. And then this ability also offsets that slightly lower HP I gave it, like I mentioned earlier. Lastly, my favorite of its abilities, Whispering Fields. This ability was inspired by the Aeorian Nullifier's Horde Gnashing ability, which enables the Aeorian Nullifier to essentially have an effect akin to the Confusion spell. But because the Magus Flytrap doesn't have mouths all over its body, this creature wouldn't produce sounds from its own body. Instead, what Whispering Fields does is the Magus Flytrap actually uses the grass it is fighting in to produce the sounds. It's as if it's whistling with grass between its thumbs, except instead of between its thumbs, it's all of the grass around it that it's standing at all at the same time. Regardless, the way this works is if a creature starts its turn within 30 feet of the Magus Flytrap, that creature needs to roll a Wisdom saving throw. The DC is 16. On a success, nothing happens, but on a failure, that creature will need to roll a D8, and that D8 determines what it does that turn. On a 1 through a 3, it's stunned until the end of its turn. On a 4 through 6, it'll run in a random direction, and on a 7 through 8, it'll attack the creature nearest to it. If multiple creatures are the same distance away, then which creature is targeted is randomly determined. With these abilities in mind, let's move on to actions. Now, the actual actions of the Magus Flytrap are pretty boring. I decided just to give it a basic multi-attack, and with that multi-attack, it makes 2 attacks using its Grass Blades ability. This Grass Blades action is the only attack available to the Magus Flytrap, but the Magus Flytrap, much like the Aeorian Nullifier, really shines with its reaction. That reaction is Consume Magic. Consume Magic is similar to Counterspell, except instead of just canceling out a spell, the spell is actually eaten by the Magus Flytrap. When a Magus Flytrap consumes a spell, 3 things happen to it until the end of its next turn. First, its magic resistance goes away, because in consuming the spell, it has flooded its own body with magical energy and can no longer resist magic like it once could. Second, because of this euphoric state that the Magus Flytrap enters when it consumes magic, it has disadvantage on saving throws against being charmed, making it more easy to persuade and bargain with, and just generally more amicable towards the party. But don't let this amicable nature fool you, because should the party continue combat with the Magus Flytrap after it's consumed a spell, the Magus Flytrap's attack are empowered until the end of its next turn. For spells of 3rd level or lower, every time it hits an attack until the end of its next turn, it gets to add 10 radiant damage to those attacks. Meaning, because as a multi-attack with 2 attacks, should both hit, that's an extra 20 radiant damage per round. If it consumes a spell of 4th level or higher, though, that damage actually increases by 5 radiant damage for every level above 3rd. So 4th level is 15, 5th level is 20, so on and so forth. With the abilities and actions behind us, let's move on and talk about encounter design and strategies for this encounter. The Magus Flytrap is very much designed to be the focal point of whatever combat you're doing, and you really should only be using one at a time. And this is because of how that damage scaling works on its Consume Magic reaction. So typically, a CR 10 creature is appropriate for a party of 4 anywhere from level 8 to level 12. If you're throwing more than one Magus Flytrap at a party, I'm assuming you're getting into player levels above level 12. At that point, the damage scaling on Consume Magic starts to break apart, because the higher level spells your players have, the more damage this creature can do, and the more skewed its challenge rating actually gets from its base CR of 10. Once you start having high level parties with this creature, it really isn't CR 10 anymore. So if you are trying to design this encounter such that the Magus Flytrap isn't fighting alone, I would instead put other small fae or small beasts with it. Things like pixies and quicklings and sprites, things that make sense to hang out around a plant like fae like this without risking ruining the balance of your encounter. Now moving on to actually running an encounter with the Magus Flytrap. As mentioned earlier, the Magus Flytrap is going to stalk its prey from afar, and so I highly recommend having it roll stealth and follow the party from afar. Likely what's going to happen is it'll detect magic coming from your party, from their magic items or any ambient spells they have left on them, things like, Mage Armor, Death Ward, and the like, and while following them in this way, it'll keep them just fairly within its detect magic sense range, anywhere from like 110 to 120 feet away, so it knows where they're going at all times, but so it keeps maximum distance for safety reasons. Then, if it becomes apparent that the party's going to stop moving, like to set up camp, or if they're about to engage in combat with a different creature, at that point, the Magus Flytrap is going to move within that 60-foot range for its Consume Magic reaction. At that point, all it's going to do is sit and wait until the moment they cast a spell so it can use its reaction. It's up to a party perception check to see whether or not they actually notice it. Roll stealth for it with advantage because it's in a grassland presumably, and see what happens. If the party can't find it, it might just sit there and keep eating spells until they do. I would highly recommend you do have it reroll stealth every time it does consume magic, and let your party reroll their perception checks every time as well. That way they have a chance of actually detecting what's going on. Otherwise, if they don't notice it one time, they'll just never notice it. Now, once your party has spotted the Magus flytrap, there is an opportunity for them to approach it friendly. But on the flip side, if they choose to attack, the Magus flytrap is going to enter combat. Bear in mind what I said earlier though in the lore description. This creature is only going to stay in combat so that it can continue to eat magic. If at any point in time it becomes apparent this creature is going to die, it will flee. Or if it's consumed a handful of spells, it may also flee as it's full up on snacks. But until then, its strategy in combat is going to be avoiding melee with as many opponents as possible while also remaining within 60 feet of a spellcaster at any point in time. This way, it can avoid taking damage and slyly move throughout the battlefield, all while still thwarting your spellcaster wherever possible. In the event that the Magus flytrap actually manages to escape this encounter without dying, this creature's gonna come back for more later. Think of this Magus flytrap as a playful disturbance for your party as they're traveling. It's a way to kind of get in their way, annoy them a little bit, all while not actually trying to kill your party in any way. And so that is my Magus flytrap. The stat block for this creature can be found in the links below. I've posted it both on the DnD homebrew subreddit as well as on a Tumblr blog that I made exclusively for these stat blocks. And if you made it this far, you might as well like and subscribe. And if there are any monsters you would like to see in a future monster mashup, leave them down in the comments below. My plan is to alternate between the videos where I choose the monsters and where I randomize the monsters. So if you comment a monster down below, it may pop up in the next video. All that being said, thank you so much for watching. I very much appreciate it, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye-bye.